Broadcasting live from the Buckhead Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Legal Experts.
Emily, who's up next?
Yes, we have Lance Gowens. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being so quiet and patient with us. And he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from the Georgia State University. Lance graduated from John Marshall Law School in 2007. In 2015, he reestablished his firm, the Gowens Law Firm, LLC, in Atlanta, Buckhead area of Georgia. Lance's areas of practice are domestic relations and family law, bankruptcy, criminal law, and real estate litigation. So you do a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
And him and his wife, Tracy, live with their 6 children in Swanee, Georgia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah, we finally figured out how it works.
Right.
Do you ever figure out how it works?
After 6, you finally figured out how it works.
Yeah, we quit. So tell me a little bit how you got into law and what you're doing today.
I always had an interest in the law. Even as a kid, I'd read mystery novels. Those were my favorite. I used to watch the old Perry Mason reruns on TBS. Now I really just enjoy helping people with their real life problems. I know it's not always as interesting as a John Grisham novel, but it is more rewarding.
Sure. Well, good. And how long have you been practicing law?
I've been practicing since 2008. I started working in a domestic relations firm, and then I ended up partnering with the individual I was working with, and we moved up to Cumming, Georgia, and then recently I moved back down to Buckhead.
Gotcha. Wow. So what made the change?
A lot of different things. It was just the economy really hit hard. My former partner used to say he always felt that divorce was recession-proof, but it certainly wasn't depression-proof. So what we found was it was just people didn't have any money there was nothing to fight over, and they just stayed married.
That's hard.
Basically, is what happened.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Which really wasn't a good situation, because a lot of times you had couples who the only reason they were married is because they didn't feel they could afford to break apart. Mm-hmm. So then you also had an increase in things like domestic violence and those kinds of issues, which are far more tragic than just getting a divorce.
Sure, absolutely. So you practice these areas of law. What's your favorite area that you focus on?
I do mostly domestic relations. I have kind of refocused things onto the criminal area. I fell into them mostly helping other clients where I'd help them in other issues. They come back, it's like, hey Lance, I'm in a pinch. Can you help me out?
Sure.
And I found I really enjoy doing the criminal defense. So it's starting to pick up a little bit in that area too.
That's good. That's great. Can you tell me like one of your I guess you can't really mention names, but one of your favorite cases?
I don't know if it was my favorite case, but it was maybe my most interesting story was a couple years ago. I had a lady come in, and she was from Haiti, and she was completely convinced that her husband had put a voodoo hex on her, and actually wanted me to seek a TPO against her husband to force her husband to remove the hex. And it became very real for her because apparently her husband went to the local Atlanta witch doctor who didn't have quite the proper mojo, if you will. So he actually traveled back to Haiti to use the Pope witch doctor, and that's when she was really scared, and for her it was really serious.
Wow.
Eventually, I got her to realize that it probably wasn't a hex on her, and we were able to get a pretty good result in her divorce.
Well, that's good. That is really interesting.
That is. We've never heard that story before.
It's just
that's a new one.
I'm probably the only one who has a voodoo hex story, but it was really interesting.
Can you give out that doctor's number? Is he here in Atlanta? Yeah.
Well, apparently the real doctor you need to talk to is in Haiti. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you still did a good job, even though it was the craziest thing, and you got what you needed for the client, or she got what she needed, which was great.
It did. It worked out good for her, and it was really kind of a sad
job.
situation, but it still was my most interesting story so far.
Sure. So what keeps you motivated day to day?
I enjoy
besides
solving.
the voodoo. Sorry.
Not so much on the voodoo, but I enjoy helping people, and I enjoy, especially in domestic relations, I think it's a different area in the law in that you're focused less on what happened, and you're more focused on what's going to happen in the future. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box. One of the issues, just that same case, was the couple had moved down from New York, so they had a house here in Atlanta with substantial amount of equity because they sold their, $500,000, $600,000 two-room bungalow in New York and bought a nice house in Gwinnett County. So trying to work out a situation where, because the mom was disabled, my client was disabled, where they wouldn't have to sell the house right now because there was no way she could afford to live and support herself if they sold the house because she didn't have any income to be able to stay in that house until the children graduated high school, and then they would sell the house and divide the money at that time. So that was something that you couldn't really get a judge to do.
Sure.
But it's something we were able to work out. So I think that's where, in domestic cases particularly, I like to think maybe a little bit outside the box to find a solution that's going to work for the family and less about what does the case law or the statutes say should happen.
And I'm sure that each case is completely unique in their own, way.
It is, and I think Judge Warren Davis in Gwinnett County, he has this little spiel every time, encouraging people to go out and talk. And, basically the parties have the ability to use a scalpel to figure out what they want to do. The court just has a hammer and a chisel. And
Sure.
Somebody's going to walk out of that courtroom unhappy if the judge has to decide.
Right.
And if you can find something that you can live with, which you usually can, you're going to be far better off in the long run.
Lance, obviously you've been at this for a while. What tips would you give some up-and-coming attorneys and entering the profession?
I think you need to have a good network of attorneys. I've found getting to know the attorneys on the other side and realizing they're not your enemy. Yes, they're your adversary in this case, but when the case is over, you're still going to see them in bar meetings. You're still going to see them at CLEs, and it's good to have that relationship with them. So when you do have a case with them down the road, you can have an open communication. And a lot of times attorneys can work things out over the phone easier than, going to court in a hearing. And I think it's also important because you'll meet people like Ken or Alex or Mike where they do things that I don't do. I can reach out to them and say, hey, Ken, I got this case and this is, maybe you can help me out on this, or I can refer it to you.
Right.
But if nothing else, what's the rule on X or Y, or what's Judge Jones like or Judge Smith like, which is important to know.
Now, when you ask them these questions, do you get billed, or is that free advice?
I've never been
from
billed.
a fellow attorney.
I've never been billed, and I've always found every attorney I've ever reached out to been more than helpful and always willing to help.
I think it's unique. We've learned from the show is that in business, being business radio, a lot of business, it's more of a competitive atmosphere and nature. But I think in the law profession, it seems to be more that I guess I don't know if it's because of the model or the need of the specialty, but you can only spin so many plates, right? And so if you're in your lane, you really have to seek someone that knows that area of law. Yes or yes?
I would agree with that, and I think too with attorneys, a lot of times it's like you see like an NFL football game. During the game, they're going at each other 100%, but after the game, they meet in the center of the field and they're shaking hands and they're praying together. I think attorneys are a lot like that. In court, obviously, we're adversaries. We're going 100%. But when it's all over, we still can be friends or be collegial with each other.
Right. And on that note, normally we don't talk politics, but I do want to ask about Mike, about Lindsey Graham. But first, speaking of this issue of working together, it seemed like back in the day, Congress used to do that fairly well, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on it? Why have we kind of lost that? Well, to Lance. I mean, a little kind of off topic. Emily's like, we don't talk politics here.
I mean, I don't know. When I was in law school, I had a great opportunity to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and afterward we got to meet with Justice Thomas, who was just a fabulous individual. And at that time, it was an issue of bringing cameras into the Supreme Court building so they could be filmed in public eye. And Justice Thomas was opposed to it, and he made the comment, and I think it explains a lot of the problems now in our political world,
right.
is that He said there are people that are the nicest people in the world, and then somebody turns a camera on them, and they just turn 180 degrees into a different person. And I think we live in a world where, I mean, everybody has a smartphone, so we're always on show. If you're a political person or a public figure, you can't go anywhere without somebody filming you. Yeah. And I think they're more into soundbite politics than say, meeting with each other. And even a lot of people think, well, backroom meetings are a bad thing. Well, backroom meetings aren't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes the people who have to make decisions need to talk about things that the rest of us really don't need to know.
Well, off the record, and so they can have that open dialogue and that conversation. But you're right. I think we're just more guarded, right, because of all of the media, personal and the traditional media.
That and I think they just like the attention of being on TV.
Exactly.
That plays a role with a lot of people.
Absolutely. So
that's a great answer.
Yeah. So let our listeners know once again how to reach out to your firm and get in touch.
You can reach me on the internet, www.gowenslaw.com, or my cell phone, or not my cell phone, my office number, 678-648-7470.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. This is Emily Rowell with Peachtree Offices signing out.